Hey everyone, I am glad you're here. I'm actually coming to you from a new location today and at a different time because I'm traveling on business. Today, I want to talk about something that I see all the time as people are approaching 65 and still working. A lot of folks assume that their HR department is just going to guide them through their Medicare decision. But the truth is, your HR team, they're experts on your company's benefits. They're not necessarily Medicare experts, and they're not experts on how to create a Medicare strategy. And one of the things that I see happen all the time as I'm dealing with professional retirees is a lot of confusion. So if you're still working at 65 or thinking about retirement soon, type working in the comments. If we haven't met yet, I'm Casey Album. I help people navigate Medicare decisions and just design a strategy that fits their life today and for years down the road. A lot of my clients refer to me as their Medicare co-pilot because I'm also a pilot, but more importantly, think of it as me sitting in the right next to you, helping to guide you through the process, and I'm there with you all throughout your journey. So today, what we're going to cover is a few things that HR departments don't explain fully about Medicare. Things like whether you actually need to enroll at 65 or not, why COBRA can become a trap after age 65, what happens if you delay Part B, and how employer size changes the conversation completely. If you've ever wondered how Medicare works while you're still employed, type me in the comments. So you don't always have to enroll in Medicare at age 65. That's a big misconception. And it's just not true. If you're still working and you're covered by a large employer group plan, you may be able to delay Medicare. And by the way, if your spouse is the employee and you're a dependent who's covered, the same rules apply for you. In some cases, that can actually be the smarter move. But there's often an important exception that a lot of people miss. If your employer is still contributing or you're still contributing to a health savings account, a lot of times as you're approaching 65, you're going to be encouraged to enroll in Part A because Medicare Part A is premium free. But if you have an HSA, that can create problems because once you enroll in any part of Medicare, you can no longer contribute to that HSA, and contributions may even need to stop months before enrollment. And that's something many HR departments aren't going to discuss with you because a lot of times they don't know the rules. It's important to stop your contributions at least 6 months prior to when you think you're going to start Medicare. Now, if you're still working, you're planning to work for a few more years, you want to continue to make contributions, don't sign up for Part A. You can delay starting Part A as well. So if you have an HSA and you didn't know about this, type HSA in the comment. Another thing a lot of people don't know about is that COBRA can become a trap as you're approaching 65 or after 65. It's another area where I see people get surprised. Most people just assume like, okay, I'm going to take COBRA when I retire and I'm going to figure it out. But after age 65, COBRA works differently. Medicare becomes the primary coverage and COBRA becomes secondary. Guess what happens if you don't sign up for Medicare? You guessed it. You just became the primary insurance company. That could get really expensive. But here's another issue. COBRA does not extend your Medicare enrollment window. When your enrollment ends, you have a limited special enrollment period to enroll in Part B. And by the way, if you're on COBRA, maybe you're transitioning from employer coverage to Medicare and you're using COBRA, you're still going to have to enroll during your initial enrollment period, that 7-month window that surrounds your 65th birthday. If you miss the initial enrollment window or you miss that special enrollment window, you could face late enrollment penalties, delayed coverage, and limited options later on. So this is a place where understanding timing really matters. If you ever heard someone say, just take COBRA, type COBRA in the comments. Another consideration that a lot of people don't think about is the size of the employer. Many people think that because they're on an employer group plan, they can continue to work. But there's two types of group plans. There's a large group plan, which consists of a company with more than 20 people on the payroll. And there's a small group, which is less than 20 employees on the payroll. If you're on the large group or your spouse is covered on the large group plan, you can stay on that plan as long as they'll let you. It's considered creditable coverage, and when you leave that plan, you're going to be able to qualify for a special enrollment into Medicare, and that'll help you waive those late enrollment penalties under Part B and Part D. But if it's a small employer, less than 20 employees on the payroll, well, as Medicare comes into the picture, that small employer plan moves into the secondary position. And that means just like the person that has COBRA, if you don't enroll during your initial enrollment period, you could face penalties. You could face limits to what's covered. It could get really expensive. So it's important to know all those details uh, before you make a decision. And the small employer plan is very common with small businesses, small family-owned businesses, sometimes professional practices, a small doctor's office, a CPA firm, a small law firm, and with self-employed professionals. And another gap with self-employed professionals, another area that we see people run into trouble is with individual plans. Maybe your practice or your business is so small that you can't even qualify to become a small group, and you have to go out into the marketplace and get an individual plan. ACA plan, also known as Obamacare, is what it's sometimes referred to. Well, when you become eligible for Medicare, first of all, you're going to lose all of the tax premium subsidies with those plans once you become eligible for Medicare. But the other thing to keep in mind is that's not considered job-based coverage. So you're going to need to enroll in your initial enrollment period at 65. Where it gets tricky with an ACA plan is technically they'll let you keep that plan and continue to pay for it if you don't have Medicare in place. But guess what happens if you miss your IEP? Well, now you're outside of IEP. You can't just drop that plan and enroll. It's not employer-based coverage. You don't qualify for a special enrollment window. So now you're having to wait until the next general enrollment window comes around to be able to enroll. You could be facing lifetime penalties as well. I can't think of a single good reason why anybody would want to keep an ACA plan past 65, because a lot of those plans have high deductibles, they have high premiums, they have networks, and you have an option to get much better coverage for the same or often lower costs when you switch to Medicare. And this is why having a strategy as you start approaching Medicare really matters. It's a good idea to start planning for Medicare at least 3 to 6 months prior to your anticipated retirement date, whether that's at 65 or later on. And by the way, if you're a covered spouse and your spouse is still working and it's a large employer plan and you're eligible for Medicare, just because your spouse is still working doesn't necessarily mean that it makes sense for you to stay on that plan. It's really important to look at things side by side and see from a cost standpoint, from a quality of coverage standpoint, networks, out-of-pocket costs, all of that, if you might have access to better coverage on Medicare. Some companies actually charge spousal surcharges. They cover a lot of the costs of the employee, but then the costs for the dependents can be really expensive. In that case, it might make more sense to switch to Medicare while the working spouse stays covered on the group plan. And in a lot of cases, the working spouse might be able to switch to Medicare and get better coverage with Medicare and a supplemental plan for the same or even less than what they're paying on their group plan, and of course with very limited out-of-pockets. So if you're approaching 65 or you're thinking about leaving an employer plan soon and you want help thinking through your options, my team and I would be honored to work with you. We do this every day. We really focus on helping retired professionals, business owners, entrepreneurs figure out their Medicare strategy and design a coverage plan that fits their overall retirement strategy and fits your life the way that you want to live. If you want to work with us, you can go to medicarequotes.com/Facebook and schedule an appointment, or you can have us call you back. You can call our office directly at 954-970-4760. Liz or Christine will get you right on the schedule, or just comment info in the comments and I'll go ahead and reach out to you personally. Sometimes a short conversation can clear up a lot of the confusion and give you some guidance that'll help you navigate some of these very tricky parts of Medicare and the things where your HR department, and I'm not, I'm not trying to hammer on HR. I mean, our HR professionals, they do a great job, but their expertise on the company benefits and the company policies. They're not experts on Medicare. They're not supposed to be. And they mean well, but oftentimes they don't have enough information to be able to provide you with the guidance that you need. And that's why a short conversation can clear up a lot of confusion. It's where having a trusted guide can really, really matter. So let's take a look at some common questions that I often get. First one, do I have to sign up for Medicare at 65 if I'm still working? And the answer to that is no, absolutely not. It all depends on your employer size and the coverage. If it's an employer of over 20 people on the payroll, you can stay on that plan as long as you'd like. Now, there may also be reasons why you want to do that. For example, maybe your spouse is 63. They don't have access to job-based coverage. Well, if you can stay on that group plan, it makes sense. The last thing you want to do is come off that group plan and now have them have to go out into the marketplace and get an Affordable Care Act plan that won't provide the same quality of coverage as you have through your group. What if you've got younger dependents? You've got kids in college that are still finishing up. They don't have access to job-based coverage. Well, that's another reason why you might want to stay on that job-based plan for at least a few more years. But you don't have to sign up for Medicare automatically at 65. Uh, a lot of people choose to sign up for Part A and delay taking Part B. And again, that makes sense if you're not actively contributing to a health savings account. Should I enroll in Part A while I'm still working? Again, sometimes yes, sometimes no. If you have an HSA, you absolutely should not. And by the way, just because you can't contribute to an HSA once you're on Medicare, you can still use the funds that you've accumulated for qualified medical expenses. What happens if I miss the Part B enrollment window? Well, you could face lifetime penalties and limited enrollment opportunities later, because you're going to have a 10% penalty for every year that you miss Part B. And then if you're outside of your initial enrollment period or you don't qualify for a special enrollment period, you're going to have to wait until the next general enrollment period before you can apply. Is Medicare sometimes better than my employer plan? In a lot of cases, yes, because especially if you have original Medicare and a supplemental plan, you have no networks, you can see any doctor anywhere in the country who accepts Medicare. You typically don't have to worry about waiting to see whether an insurance company is going to approve a test or a procedure. So Medicare with a supplement can typically provide much more freedom and much more predictable costs, limited out-of-pocket costs. In a lot of cases, what we see is that the cost of Medicare with a supplement is the same or even less than what you might have been paying on your group plan, and it provides much better coverage, but not in every situation. So the key takeaway today is this: your HR department knows your company's plan very, very well. But Medicare decisions are not just simple enrollment decisions. They often require a separate strategy conversation, because your Medicare strategy is a key component of your overall retirement strategy. And the decisions that you make at 65 or when you start Medicare, those are going to stay with you for life. And they're going to determine what doctors you get to see when you need care, how freely you are able to travel and have coverage that travels with you. It's also going to determine what type of financial exposure you have. And let's face it, a significant medical issue could be really, really devastating, especially to someone who is living off of a retirement plan that's got to last them for the rest of their life. So you've got to make sure that your Medicare decisions are made as part of that overall retirement conversation. Understanding the timing and your options can make a big difference in terms of your long-term flexibility and your long-term financial situation. If you'd like help trying to figure it out, or maybe just get a second opinion about your individual Medicare strategy, my team and I'd be on to work with you. You can go to medicarequotes.com/Facebook, grab an appointment, or have us call you back. You can type info in the comments and I'll reach out to you, or you can call the office directly, 954-970-4760, and Liz or Christine will get you on the schedule. Thanks for joining me today. I will see you next week back at our normal scheduled time of 3 p.m. Eastern Time for another Medicare Live. Have a great week, everybody.